Hello, good evening. Good evening to all. We have to wait for 5 minutes to join. So today we will discuss about the barriers to effective communication and their management. So the last class we have discussed what is communication, what how this process is very effective, the tips, whether it is verbal, non-verbal, or the language, coding, decoding, message, sender, receiver, everything. So, in spite of all things, the communications are disrupted by different mechanism, by different sources. So, this communications are very much disruptive due to different kinds of interpretation or interrupt or disturbance. So the communication process, which is uh, very a important process for transformation for information, that may be disturbed by different types of agents. So these are called as barriers of communications or barriers. That mean obstacle. How the information can be transfer from one to another, that is depends on some factors. Yesterday we have discussed what are the factors, like the messenger, the media, and different encoding, decoding, everything. But still there are not 100% efficient way to transfer the informations. In between the sender to receiver, some informations and some data that may be lost. So the data which is lost due to the barriers. So how, what are this barrier and how we manage, that is today we discuss on that things. So this is the points of discussion. Communication, what the process of communication, we already discussed these things. Then significance of communications, why communication is very much important, because information transfer, whether it is face to face or by giving a talk or a knowledge transfer, giving a lectures, this is, that's why information communication is very much necessary. Then process already discussed. Then come to barrier and barrier to communications. So these we two things we are going to discuss here. So we already discussed communications is transfer of message through signal, whether in written, whether you by listening, or whether you talking, whatever may be the process. So let's again it say what is the communication. So it is the process through which two or more people exchange the informations, ideas, thoughts, emotions in such a way that each gain a common understanding of the instant message. So this is technical definitions. Whatever the information that can be sender and messenger or receiver both are having good understanding without the barriers of the or without some difficulties. So that is the process of communications. So it is the process of dyadic concept. Dyadic concept means both to and fro concept. Whatever you are either receiver or sender, it does not mean. So both having a common understanding in two-way process. So in communication system, 35% message is carried verbally and 65% is non-verbally. So yesterday we have discussed that communications are either oral or verbal, or maybe signal or non-verbal. So oral or verbal, that is 35%, and most of the cases the communication is non-verbal, whether in a coding things or maybe written things or whatever it may be signaling. So without saying a words, you can transfer some your information to others. That is called non-verbal. Whether it is maybe written or email or signaling, that is different thing. But you do not have to talk it. So that is called non-verbal. And if you are delivering a talk, that is called verbal. So majority of communications is done through non-verbal, whether by email, via letter, or via signaling system. So communication is a process of sending and receiving on between both parties. It is the daily day-to-day life. In our life, we are always communicate to each other. Your friends, your parents, your teacher, your everywhere. You want some things, then you have to tell. or you have to write something. So that is the process, or that is a common process of communication. So models of communications. So these communications we already discussed. Sender is the one is sender, one is receiver. Sender is the encoders, receiver is the coders, sorry decoders. In between there is a media and there is a message. The message may be either face to face, maybe video conferencing, maybe telephonic message transfer, maybe speech, a talk delivered or in a public place, either through voicemail, it may be online, maybe email, maybe giving writing a letter, maybe some bulletins, that means magazines in form of books, in form of magazines, in form of newspaper, or by watching some ads, by watching some TV programs, media, whether it is television or radio media. Whenever you are take and receive some message, that is the communications. So everywhere communication having different roles in it. And lastly, but not the least, the feedback of the communication is very much important between the sender and receiver, because without feedback we cannot understand that whatever we are delivering they are actually understand by the receiver or not. So that's why feedback is very much necessary. Then significance of communications. Why communication is important? Because lifeblood of an individual organism. This is a very much important thing. If someone having not able to talk, if someone is not able to give communications, then it cannot be exist in our society. In society, if you are in a social, because humans are social peoples, the peoples which can be communicate is a daily life things, and it is in the blood of every humans living in the society. Even if some uh, person who is not able to talk, by signaling he can see, he can show something, he can tell his emotions, like if he feels angry, he feels hungry, or maybe want to tell something, then through signals, hand movement, body gesture, they can always every people they have to communicate to others people. As you grow you communicate more and more, because from childhood to elderly people, when our friends are killed, our the relationships and other humans we interact in daily life are increasing as we are growing. So communication is very much important process. And communication is also very much important, because whatever you are going to talk, you cannot be revert back. Because if you are telling something in a very non informal way, or something which is not effective to both, then what happens, the communication may be a desert or hazard for you. That means the words, once you tell the words, you cannot revert back. So some there are so many examples are there. So in all domains of the life, all directions, always there is a communication, and the communication may be downwards, may be sideways, and may be upwards. So downwards means from top to bottom to sorry, top to bottom. Sideways means along your friend circles. Upwards means from you to your higher information or higher authorities. So that is different kinds of information systems. If you wrote some letters to your HOD or your dean, then the communication is different. If you are talking with some of your friends, the communication is different. And when some prime minister or some authority is higher authority talking to the downstream, then the communication is different. So everywhere communication is must, but the process, the way on the media, that is different. Then next, our main topic is barrier of the communication. So what are the barrier, what is the barrier, and how this barrier can be overcome? That is our main focus of the topic of the today's topic. So let's see what is the barrier and how this barrier can be effect to the communication process. Hmm. So see, this is simple mechanism of barrier in communication. For example, if you are talking to your friends, then what happened? Uh, in between you and your friend, there is a medium or channel through which the information can be passed. So if there is nothing in between you and your friends or someone who is talking, then the media is air and the space. That is the medium through which the words of the sender and the receiver they can exchange. So obviously, whenever whatever may be the things in between sender and media, receiver, there is a channel or medium how the information can be transferred. So first person who is called sender, they have the ideas generate or having some idea within his mind. Second, the idea which he's had in his mind, then the written rewrite that idea in the form of message, that is called coded message. After that, the message is talking or sending to the receiver. So three processes here: the first generation of idea, then idea to written form or to talking form, that means that is coded form. After that, the idea is coded, it is called a message. The message should be sent, transfer. So these are three forms. And the receiver on the other hand, once message is received, first is process is received, second is decoded. If the message is in different language or different coding, then it decoded. Then the idea which is originated by the sender, which is understood by the receiver. So six process is there, and in between this process there is a medium and barriers are there. Barriers means obstacle. And after that there is a feedback channel, whether the barriers are overcome or not, it can be understood through feedback. So let's understand what is the barrier. So barriers are lack of the commonness is called a barrier. Lack of the commonness. See, barrier mean does not mean that there is a boundary or does not mean there is a wall in between you and your person who is talking you. Barrier means lack of commonness. That means if the two people conversation to each other, they does not have any common language, so there may be a barrier. If you are talking in Gujarati or someone is not understanding Gujarati, so that is the barrier. So barrier means the commonness, lack of commonness. If both are aware in Hindi, you can talk with Hindi. Even if one is Telugu and one is Bengali or one is Gujarati, but all common peoples, all common have known the language English or Hindi, then you can talk and share the information. So if you do not know Hindi or English, then you cannot transfer your message properly. So that is called lack of commonness. That is only the barrier. So a barrier to interpersonal communication is anything that prevents, restricts, or impairs the everyone of meaning of the words or gestures between two or more persons is a social setting. That means whatever things that can be prevents or restrict or impedes to the communication process between the two who are talking and receiving. So that is called the barrier. The term barrier, or it is the call obstacles or hinderness which can be hinder the process of transformation of information, or also called it's a noise, because whenever there is a noise, even if both are in talking each other, you cannot understand why who is what is the information that is given. That is also called as noise, are used to describe distracting stimuli. So distracting stimuli, that means if two persons are talking each other and there is a big DJ is playing inside of this thing, or TV radio sound is very volume is very high. So even if they are talking each other in a loud noise, it cannot be proper understanding between them two. So that is called distracting, something obstacle. That is also called noise. That is the called the barrier. This is the simple examples. Another example is if someone is want to tell something, but what happened at that time there is some any disturbing things occurs, or for example, he is feeling very hungry, or he is being in an accident, does not his vocal, or he is having seriously injured. At that time also he cannot transfer the message properly. So that is a one kind of stimuli, or that is a kind of barrier. So let's understand what are different kinds of barrier. So these are the various kinds or various types of barrier of the communications. So what are these? Social, psychological, cultural, physiological, system design, physical, and receivers. So these are different barriers. These are, please have go through the slides, and it is a important questions for your answer. What are the different barriers of the effective communications? Let's understand one by one. First barrier is social barrier. So what do you mean by social? Because all peoples are a social peoples or social animal. We are the social animal. That means all we are living in a group, in a society. So peoples are always social. But some animals, they are not social. They are can living, they are cannot cooperate to each other. They are cannot be living together in a family. But humans, we are living in a social. We have a family. We have a town or village or society. We have a things or groups of peoples. Some are, for example, some are Muslims, some are Hindus, some are Gujaratis, some are Telugus. So these are groups are called as social. This society group. So the social things interprets some cases for the transmission of this information. So social barriers includes gender, age, race, national or cultural origin, socio-economic classes, education level, urban or rural residents. So let's understand one by one how this is become a social barrier. First thing is gender. So what is gender? Gender means uh, the sex. What is your either male or female? So the talking or the communicate process of both sex, male or female or gender, they have differently for different peoples. For example, a man is talking to a man, the way is different. If a man is talking to a woman, the way is different. And the two women are talking to each other, then the information sharing process is different. So you understand what is the effect of this gender. So major influence is the way of communicate with each other through a gender, through this gender barrier. When a man and woman work together in a group, then men tend to more assertive and self-confidence. The men are having more powerful than women normally due to the confidence and all the things. So the way of talking that of men is more rude, more brilliant than women. But the women when we are talking, they are more softness is in their mind and they are talking very sweetness. But men having some rudeness. So that is the different kinds of barriers. Women are more likely than men to express their emotions to reveal how they feel about the situations. In case of situation explanations, women are very much effective than explanations the men. Men are just emotionless, but women they express the emotion very quickly. So that is the difference between the gender. Then next social barrier is age. Young people and old people. Different people having different talking power, different receiving power, different power. If you are conversation between a old man and a young man, so old man may not be here properly as compared to the young man. So that is the thing. Different people have different age, having different power of communications. So young people is a very energetic, dynamic. They can express, they can emotions very easily. But the older people, they may not be express these things. Or if you are talking to a child, then understanding level of the child is different. So the age is also a factors of social barriers. They're different. So if you are talking a small children, 2 years children, small child, that way is different. When you are talking to a 20 years mature age, that is a young age, that is different. If you are talking to a 80 years old people, the way is different. So we tend to judge a statement by different standards according to the age. So as persons, because if old people is giving a talk, then he having more experience than you. So he can better explain, better transfer the information rather than a young people. So that is also different. A person's age and or gender is an important factor for the judging the truth of wisdom that person say. So whether the person is telling lie or whether the person is properly spreading the message or transfer the information. So the age and gender is a important factor as well, social barrier. Also their maturity, educational backgrounds and different areas of the which they grow up, that is called generation gap is vetable. So that is also important point. 19th century, the media, the instrument they are available, that is different, their time is different, or 20th century different, or some 21st century the people is different. So each generations having different kinds of his understanding, and the instruments are there for communicate. For examples, in 19th century, the mobile phone, use of mobile phone is not a common here. The smartphone is have not been identified at that time. So either they may talk with the old fashioned telephone or maybe telegram. But nowadays 21st century, the video call is a common, WhatsApp call, video, mobile, this is a very common thing. So the communication is better than the 19th century rather than 20th century. So the communication is also the age, sorry, the generation is also a barrier. If you communicate with old generation people, then you have to take it in that way. Also the educational background, whether the person is educated or not. If you want, if you talking to a educated person, then the communication should be different. You should, you if you talking to an illiterate person, then the process of communication is different. If you are talking some illiterate person in a rural area, then the process will be different. So that is also a communication barrier. And social barriers also having different types of things. For example, purpose of communication, that is also a different thing. Informative, entertaining, perceptive, these are also a point of social barriers. Purpose are not clear, missing, or that means why you are giving or go for the communications. So the purpose, that is also a important thing. For example, a small child, or at your age, you may need a bike, or need some riding some car. So that is the interesting. But as you are not earning money, you are depend on your parents. So you may not force to asking them. So the way of talking about these things is a different thing. But you are earning 1 lakh rupees per month, then the way of talking to your parents is different because you are now earning. So the purpose, which purpose you are need or you are do the communications. So that is important. Then social noise, objective factors is also important. Social noise, human relation, personal interference, but raw objectivity of the communications, boy, girl, friend, enemies, nice or good, bad peoples. So there's understanding that also your way of talking and the communication is different. That's called social barrier. Second is called as psychological barrier. So what is psychological barrier? The barrier which is due to your attitude, your personalities, whether you are in fear or not, attitude towards audience, whether you, what do you think about audience if you are giving a talk, attitude towards your message, whether you are confident or not, your personalities, you yourself is not convinced with the subject. If you not clear what you are going to talking yourself, then you cannot deliver it properly. Knowledge of subject, for example, if you are going to talk a seminar or a deliver a important message to a public, but you do not have the subject knowledge for that, so how you can deliver that message? That is also a barrier. Personality status of the communicator, whether you are in a good mood or your personality is not bad, or whatever is a good personality. For example, have you listened some what do you call motivators or some importance? For example, that different speakers they are motivates people towards different kinds of spiritual, some business motivators. So the influencer, we may call it influencers. So that personality depends. Same word is talking by a some influencer, like let's say Bollywood celebrity Salman Khan and Shah Rukh Khan, same words, that is very much effective rather than we may talk, because we are not famous, or we are not become a that personality and famous for that. So the personalities, the famousness, or that also depend. So this is called psychological barriers. Then is perception. Perception means how the receiver extract or receive the message. So the physical limitations, screen through which perceives things that is in our environment, that is called perception. For example, you are watching televisions, or you are watching for a movies, and movie is same for everyone, but how you take the story, how you perceive the things, that is different for different people. For same movie, someone is like, someone is not like. So that is called perception. So that is also one kind of barriers. If you do not like someone, or do not like some movie, even if you watching or listening to him, you do not having good receipt of the message. But your famous one which is liking very much, they are talking, they are giving some message, even if the message is not important, you like that one. So that is different. So choosing from the many things in our range of perception is the barrier, that's called selective perception. So that is also a physical barrier. Here is the examples. Mother, will you straighten up your rooms, straighten up your rooms? Teenager, why, that's messy. So this is the perception of a mother and teenager. That means, let's say you or your younger brother. For example, in your room, you have sprayed here and there books, clothes everywhere, but that is not messy according to you. It is very well. But in your mother's view, that is a very messy room. No thing is properly arranged. So how things can be viewed, that is called perception. This is one example. Selective perception, that means allows us not only to block our things, but also see more than their things. For example, someone is telling something, so whatever is about to see or whatever to about to hear, that is the not only things, but also in behind the hidden message, or the hidden things that you may see through your perceptions, means your imaginations, leads or takes your more own reality. Most clearly seen is human tendency to stereotype others. That means human tendency to have, just you do not like, then just ignore that ones. That is the common human tendency. That is also a barrier. Next is motivation. Motivation means when you are interested to doing, or when you are morely attached to something, at the things, their motivations. A motive is a reason for the actions. If you are interested, or if you are very much attractive to someone on some personal or some things, then you are motivated to doing that things somewhere. So you have change your mind to your work or into actions. Whatever you thought, you start to doing that thought into actions. That is called motivation. The most strongest motivation of these things are most personal. So your motivation, what you want, what is your mission, what is your vision, what your motiveness, that is different from different person to person. So we are motivated by money, fame, power, love, status, security, skill, ambition, etc. Someone is going behind money, who do not want education, only he needs money. So money motivation is money. Someone is not wanted money, but they are going for name and power and fame, so he spends crores of rupee in behind this to achieve that things. Someone is also motivated in love. If he is not about the name, fame and money, he wants only love from others. So that is thing. Someone is motivated to spiritual things. Nowadays this Kumbh Mela have arranged in our Prayagraj, that so many Naga peoples and the sadhu sants are there. They are motivated by this god, or motivated by the spiritual things. So that jumping of the things or doing the action things, that are motivated, If motivation is also a barrier, if you are motivated doing one thing and you are transferring a different thing, so that is also called a barrier. So it can be both positive and negative. Motivation also positive and also negative, depending on the situations and the interest of the personality. Then next is tunnel vision. Tunnel vision is called as closed way of thinking, especially about abstract topics such as religion and politics. So everywhere you can see there is a conversation or there is a communication of the religious and politics. So everywhere, whenever you open the news channel, there always be there is a debate going on, Hindu, Muslims, Christians, mostly Hindu Muslim in India, or maybe politics, whether it is a BJP or BJP Congress. The two things that is mostly spreads the things, mostly the communications or the talking between these things. So these things, how someone is thinking about this and the talking, that is called tunnel vision. The person with tunnel vision is who is firmly fixed the ideas. That means someone seeing a good thing or bad thing for a long term vision about religion politics, that is called tunnel vision. This is also a kind of barrier. For examples, let's say Bhagavad Gita in Hindu, there are so many good things are written in Bhagavad Gita Hindu, irrespective of any religions. But the same thing cannot be read by Christian and Muslims because they hate it. So they have tunnel vision towards that, not broad vision. So this is one example. This is where that is a communication barrier. If you are telling some important topics from the Bhagavad Gita to Christian, so they cannot listen, even if it is a good thing. So that is a barrier. Then opposite side of open mindedness. This is reverse of this tunnel vision. If someone is open to everything, then whether it is irrespective of any interest or not, they listen and grasp the knowledge. That is called open mindedness. Person with tunnel vision have attitude seems to say, I have already made in my mind, do not confuse with the facts. So tunnel mind means narrow minded. You do not want to listen what is he wants. That is tunnel minded. Rather than should become a open mindedness, that is also good for the communication. Then ego or defensiveness. This is also another communication in barriers. A person with ego does not listen to anyone. This is real fact. Person pretend to be a person who follow the patterns with the disagreement, because if a egoist person cannot listen everyone. So even you want to communicate to him or her, though it is failed. So self-centered communication. So he only listen himself. That is also a barrier. More than just being a selfish. So that person is called as selfish. So all selfish persons are not effective communicator. Last are negative emotions. Almost always obstacles to good communicators. So whatever the obstacles, the communication process it can overcome, become a thing. So these emotions are also a kinds of barriers. So especially true barrier is the emotion is uncontrolled, unfocused and misdirected. Due to the emotions, we may miscontrolled, misdirected or unfocused. That is somewhere emotions is also a barrier of the communication. Then other types of psychological barriers. So what are these? People's state of mind means what is your mood that depends on the you are listening or not. For example, you feel sleepy in your class and the teacher going to continuously teaches or stating the talking. Then even if you are present in the class, you do not have listen that things. So that is a communications barrier. That is your present state of mind. Whether you are happy, whether you are sad, if you are happy, then you may interestingly listen that things. If you are sad, then you may go and sleep. That is the state of mind, how communication barriers. Personal problems, worries. If you have lost your wallet or lost 1 or 2 lakh rupees, then your mood is not good, obviously. And your also someone is just quarrels with his family, with his wife and children. He may not be a good state while you know working in a any institutions or outside. So at that present state of mind, that also a kind of physical psychological barrier. Preconceived notions or communicator or receiver. That is someone which is previously directed by someone, that also a types of communication barrier. Mental limitations of human beings, failure before language experience, confusion or concept. This is also a communication barrier. Someone is do not, I already give the example, someone does not know Gujarati language and you are talking to him with Gujarati, that you cannot understand. So both have should be have a common languages known to overcome this barrier. Okay, next is cultural barrier. What are these things? Cultural barriers. Cultural barriers are some kinds of things. They are causing problems for communication. For our example, this is semantic problems. What is semantic problem? Distortions in communication come from semantics. For example, use of words, expressions which have a different meaning for the different culture. Same word in having a different meaning in different culture. So if you are want to tell something in a different cultural people, they are understanding in a different way. Double meaning sentence, that means that is also a types of communication barrier. Then sender and receiver, they have different culture, so the cultural barrier is occur here, created when communicator use technological jargon uses to common particular field of specialization. For example, if you are specialized in biotechnology and if you are talking some scientific words to a common people, even if he is not aware about these things, so at that time the technical term should not be good or understand by these people. That is also a cultural barrier. Examples of a cultural barrier. Then language is a cultural barrier. Different cultures, different language, dialects, individual linguistic ability, different words, pronunciations of words, punctuations. That also a barrier. Someone is not going to. If you are reading some things from newspapers and someone is listening, but you do not punctuate or do not having a proper voice to read the things, so the listener cannot understand these things. So that is also a barrier. If you do not know Telugu language and in front of you there is a Telugu newspaper is there, so you cannot read these things. That is also a barrier. Norms and values. So there are different norms, different values in different culture, so that is also a different barriers. Belief and social practices and traditions. Some cases it is believed there is some taboo, some social practices to not to do something and do in something in different to different culture. It varies. So this is also a cultural barriers for communication. Then physiological barrier. So physiological barriers are individual personal discomfort. That is ill health, poor eyesight, hearing difficulties. If someone do not see properly without glasses, then if the glass is broken, you do not have eyeglasses, then he cannot read something. Someone having hearing problem, so that is also a barrier for them. Even if all things are good, so these are called physiological barriers. Then speech and voice defects, feeling of inferiority, diseaseness, physical appearance, and lack of skill. If you know that things but do not a skill to explain the things, so in front of you, you cannot, the persons cannot perceive the thing whatever you are telling. So that is the lack of skill. And speech voice defect. If you are using a mic for the telling something, the mic having some disturbance in his within it is not clear audible to all people. That is also a barrier. If you are feeling sick, you are in disease, you want not to state in the telling something, that is a barrier. Then system design. So organizational structure that is non-clear or whom to communicate, that is the system design. For example, someone is telling or someone want to convey some message, but whom to message? who is the actual receiver of message, that is not confined. So that is the system design failure. So that is also a barrier. Insufficient incorporate and information systems. If someone transfer some information, but it is whatever the information is transferred, that is insufficient. For example, if you are telling something, for example, five people in your classes finish. So what that? Five students of your classes, what? Pass or fail. If you do not tell this one, that full line cannot be complete. Only I told five students of your classes. Then what? Pass or fail, or there may be selected for a different state level competition, whatever may be. If the information does not complete within us, then it is also a barrier. Then information overloaded, that is also a barrier. Insufficient is also a barrier, and overloaded extra information within a short time, that is also a barrier. So that information should be sufficient and enough, not overloaded or insufficient. A lack of clarity and role and responsibility. So information is good, but when who want to transfer the information, it do not have any role, do not have any giving responsibility, then the information may not be properly transmitted to the people. A lack of supervision, lack of training, lack of skill, these are called system design barriers. Then the distortions of message is one kind of loss. Deformations, mispresentations, alternations of takes place of the original message to the audience. For example, if you are writing something, someone is telling something, and if you are listening properly, you are writing. But whenever your writing is not enough good to understand by the others, even if you are writing that thing, your handwritten is not read by the others. Your very poor handwriting is there. So this is one kind of barrier. Information loss. If you are listening something, and while listening to writing, you misunderstood or misconcept different thing, and you are writing different thing. That is also a barrier. So these are the different types of distortions are there. For example, systematic distortion, that means purposefully change. Someone is knowingly disturbed and do not want to spread this message and oppose that thing, that is called knowingly disturb. Then fog distortions, information is lost. In that cases, the information while travel from the number one people to serially number two, three, like that number 100 number of people. So even if small percent the message is lost from one starting to ending, the whole information may be changed. So that is called fog distortions, or slightly, slowly, the correct information is altered. Third is mirage distortions. That means exaggerations of something. Unwanted things enter into the informations. Someone is telling something, but you just add new things to that. Like that, adding some new thing, that's called mirage distortion. So these are the barriers of communication. You cannot spread the proper communication to the audience. Status and power difference. This is also a information's loss or communication barrier. For example, the information which is transferred from the prime minister to a common people, so many authorities are in between that. So while transforming something to the higher authority to lower authority, every stage, every times, there should be some addition or deletion of the information. So that is the status of the power differences. Difference between likely to parallel or different powers. So at that time, the higher to lower party, the information should be changed. Then physical barrier. This is something which is actually oppose those your information. So first is the channel. Channel is nothing but the media where you transfer. Ability of channel to the receivers. That means you do not have any way to tell something to your friend who is sitting in America. You do not have his number, contact number, or do not have an email. But you want to tell something or giving some message to your friend who is sitting in Canada or America. So we do not have any phone number or email or something. So how you can transfer the information? So you do not have any channel. So this is your barrier. Choice of channel, that is also one kind of barrier. If you have email and phone number and you have to choose at least one, if you directly call to the persons who is sitting in Canada or America, then the phone call or video call, it can be a best communications rather than someone is writing an email, because email writing that converts some encoding or decoding message that may be altered. So the choice is also a barrier. Handling of channel communicator, someone is giving some letter to a third person to reach to another person receiver, in between the channel or in between the message is fake or some misleading, not reach to the communicator. So this is also a barrier. Reach depending on the size of audience or the thing noise level. If you are giving, someone is giving talk to a huge hall without a mic, so last people, last row who are sitting in last row, they cannot even hear the noise of the speaker. So that is the barrier. There must be a mic, must be a sound loudspeaker to spread of this news. Noise level and channel, if there is too many noise, means TV is on, radio is on whenever you are talking, or some two people are quarreling each other, disturbance, that is also barrier. Presentation information is message is treatment, the presentation PPT is not clear whenever you are giving a talk, that is also a barrier. Model messages, that means the messages which is fascinatingly way to describe, that is also a barrier, it cannot be put actual message. For example, dogs for sale will eat anything, especially like children. Call this number for more information. So this thing is not having any proper message or proper communication. So dog for sale. This is one different. The dog are here for sale. Then will eat anything, especially like children. So whenever you read this sentence, it is misleading. Whether dogs are eating children? No. So these two messages are two different purposes. So you cannot write everything in a single lines or single things model. So this is just a barrier, means physical barrier. Next is climate. Extremely hot temperature, cold temperature. You cannot deliver the message properly. Bright or dim light. If there is reading something and if you are reading in a very low light or very high light, you cannot be able to understand. High humidity, temperature or maybe comfortness. If you do not feel comfort, wearing a very huge tight fitting shirt and pant, not comfortable to breathe, then you cannot be deliver a talk or cannot be here in mood. Here the things can be worse. So these are the physical barriers. Then physical barriers also, distractions occurs when people are constantly coming and leaving for the regions. If you are sitting in your office and every 2 minutes the people are entering and leaving through sides of you, so you distract by things. You cannot focus in your work. That is also a barrier. Distractions, noise, photographer, any announcement, any instruction, tea, late coming, these are also big barriers. Physical setting in classroom, lecture hall, sitting arrangement, audio visual aids. If there is not proper, if projector in your classroom is not properly working, then this is also a barrier. If the children, student are sitting haphazardly, then that is also a barrier. There, someone is telling something in your classroom, the teacher is telling something in classroom, and you students are just interact to each other, then that is also a barrier. You cannot listen to the teachers. So all are physical barriers, comes under physical barriers. Then lastly, receiver or ultimate the barrier, who is receive the things, that's called receiver. So absenteeism, daydreaming or pretending learning, these are the three most important barriers. Even if you are present in class, if you are thinking somewhere, so you cannot be listen the information, that is called absenteeism. Daydreaming means if you are thinking very, say I, or you are sleeping in daytime and dreaming. Pretending listening, even if you are not interested to listen but you are just showing that no I am listening, so at that point also you cannot get the actual message. Strayers, the constantly take group of track, the drag discussion out of context, this is also a barrier. Some people are dragging these things here and there. Grabbers, they are the people who like to talk fast and dominate the discussions. This is also a barrier. If some people are talking, for example, a group discussion is happening, one person is dominant to others. So other four people in the group, they cannot speak, express themselves due to the dominance of the one person. That is also a barrier. Silent, if you do not want to tell anything, you just silent, 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 then that is also a barrier. If you are shy or do not want to talk, that is also a barrier, silentness. So these are the different barriers. Then problem of homogeneity, more homogeneous the audience, greater the successful communications. For example, someone is telling in a lecture and the audience are mostly Gujarati. So if the person who is expert is telling, if he is tell in Gujarati language, then it is better understand by the audience. If the audience are mixed, whether they are Telugu, Tamil, Gujarati, Hindi, Marathi, Malayalam, anything. So if the speaker is telling mixed language, then some persons are understand by some group of people. So that not be a effective. This is also a barrier. Problem of cooperation and involvement, the audience and the people cooperative not cooperative, then also a barrier. Negative attitude of the audience towards the communicator, if the someone is telling something and the people who are not grasp the communicator, so that is also a kind of barrier. So everything that is distract or not properly transfer the message, that is a communication barrier. So problems in communications, what is effective environment, ineffective environment, unrecognized effort of communicator, poor standard correctness, inaccurate symbols, whatever sign language or verbal language. If you are showing thumbs up, but you are not feeling good, so in front of you, they thought that you are feeling good. That's why you are good, showing thumbs up. So if you do not know the symbols and giving the wrong symbol, then there's in communication barrier. Wrong handling of the channels, use of inadequate channels in parallel. So the channels which the information is transfer, it is also not want to handling. If you do not want to text message, if you do not want to how to call a video call, then how you can be communicate to others. So the lack of these things also a communication barrier. Physical distraction, obviously failure to those distractions, successful message. If you are sending some message from one place to another place, but it cannot reach to the place, in between the information is lost, there's also a barrier. So communication is always a two-way process. So if the process is lost in any way, that is a problem. So responsibility of the communicator, feedback is important, because we know whether the communication is good or bad, whether it is effective not effective. Use heart and mind soul for the effective results. If you are telling something, if you are talking at something, then your effort of this communication is very much important. Communication is a skill, learn and practice, very much effective word, but you have to develop that way of talking, way of listening, way of telling or representing something, everything, way of dressing, non-verbal communication symbol, like that. You have to train yourself, practice yourself. If suddenly I told you, give a topic and tell that go and deliver a talk in front of hundreds numbers of people, you cannot do it, because you do not practice it. You may become nervous if you go for a first time. So practice and practice that can be better for this communication process. So this is all about the barriers and how to handle these barriers of the communication. So that's all for today class. And uh, this onwards your class course will be finished. So this is the last class for unit 4. So that's all for today's class, and all the best for your end sem. If you have any questions or any doubts, then you may ask. Meanwhile, I will mark your attendance. Do you have any questions? Rudrasil and Vaishnavi. Do you have any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. So let's meet in the second sem directly. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.